Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is Election Edge Tuesday's edition. 6 o'clock on the East Coast, 3 o'clock out west. It's debate night in America, and we're going to give you a nice preview today, folks. I've got a very special guest who knows a lot about both candidates and a lot about polling and some other things we'll talk about later about certain folks that may or may not vote in this election. Christian Briggs, welcome to Election Edge. Happy to have you as my guest today. You're the CEO of Hard Asset Management, Inc., and you've got a lot of experience in politics, so the timing couldn't be more appropriate in having you on the show today. Welcome.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I love being on your show. And yeah, I think today's going to be interesting because if everybody understands there are two ways to look at things. We can take what people's opinions are, or we can take the math, right? The math doesn't lie. It usually is pretty easy to decipher. And in today's show, we're really going to dive down into the math of things, especially on illegal immigration and what these polls actually mean.
Christian, speaking of polls, okay, they've been tightening lately. I mean, there's been some indication. New York Times came out over the weekend with their Donald Trump up by 1 point. Every liberal, radical Democrat in the country started freaking out. That has been a pretty good poll over the years, the New York Times Siena. It was followed up by Harvard Harris polls showing basically Trump with a 1 point lead. Pew Research had it even, okay? Emerson came out very, very tight. And the swing state polls, again, you could not get tighter. I mean, they're all within 1 or 2 points, at least the public polling is. Now, the private information that the campaigns have is slightly different. But Christian, what do you make of these, the public polling on the eve of the election? And I know there's some issues behind it, but it does appear that President Trump has a little bit of momentum heading into this, and that what they call the Harris honeymoon may have peaked already.
Yeah, I think the honeymoon's peaked. But let's talk about the realization of what the polls represent. The polls are sample-based systems that draw upon constituents on either party and sometimes outside the normal two parties, libertarian and independent. And so when they do sample-based, they'll take maybe 1,200 to 1,500 individuals, have a system call them and ask them, what is your opinion of the election? What's your opinion of the candidate? How are you going to vote? What may be the issues? Those are standardized. It's kind of like Nielsen sample-based system of understanding ratings on TV and types of shows that were in the past utilized for ad services. And we know this. It's the same thing with the election and the way the politics work. They need them to raise money. They need to show that their candidate is clearly in the forefront. The honeymoon right now with Kamala Harris is clearly over. Her policies now are going to become front and center. It used to be the derivative of she's the first female candidate that truly has aspiration and has even inspiration to get to the White House. So as we move forward, let's look at where the numbers are. Let's be realistic on the expectations. Let's not use hope as a viable understanding of a way that you want to kind of go for your candidate. You got to look at the policies now. Trump is about 3 to 4 points clearly in the lead among the polls that are being taken with the people that are giving feedback. That is a fact. Her agenda has now been published online. It's also been captive in recordings video from years past. So it's kind of being skewed, or it's being put in such a way that whatever she says now, she has to go back and kind of reiterate, or she's going to explain a different change in both what her policy is or her standings are from years past. So if we're looking at the polls, let's go over that real quick. Okay, we got the bookie sites, right? The betting sites. Remember, the betting sites have literally all the skin in the game. They live and die by being right or wrong. They've got to be right way more times than wrong. So they're going to take every algorithm from online viewership of content, likes, dislikes, shares, anything that's going to give them some quantitative understanding of, hey, this is an ad by the Democrats. It's highly being watched. People are sharing it. People are commenting on it. Same thing with the Republicans. So based on some of those things and the sample base calling to get feedback from constituents, I truly believe that she is probably 3 points behind based on those right now. But let's talk about the unknown voter, or the voter that doesn't have the wherewithal or doesn't want to be seen or heard. Let's talk about illegal immigration. Can we talk about that? because that
Yeah,
is a
great point.
big
Yeah,
problem.
let's go, because that is going to affect this election and some of this stuff. It may be a little unpleasant to hear, but we do need to discuss it, because we're going to give it to you straight on this show, folks. So Christian, go ahead. You've got some facts you've uncovered for us.
Yeah, I do. So give me some runway here, and I want people to understand that as far right as you want to go or far left, the math is the math. People lie, math doesn't. So here we go. When you take illegal immigration, we got to go back more than 3.5 years, because this has been going on for decades. But the numbers in the last 10 years are about 40 million people, give or take, 30 on some end, 40 on others, is where the illegal immigration numbers are kind of coming out. You got about 15 million, give or take, to 18 million clearly over the last 3.5 to almost 4 years since Biden took office. So when you look at the context of the numbers, and you pair that with the Social Security Administration's own numbers, again, you've got to look at the benefits of the system that are now aligning with people that are signing up for those benefits. Those benefits are now giving out to people that are less than 60 years old, in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s. That's illegal immigration, or that's some kind of immigration that's been labeled as, oh, maybe it's safe harbor immigration, or maybe it's asylum immigration, maybe it's something to do with the executive order that was signed that created a loophole within the Illegal Immigration Voting Rights Act. That's what's interesting. And so when you look at what they're trying to do in Congress right now, which is to attach a bill that would make illegal immigrants or illegal or non-citizens, let's just call it non-citizens because there's so many of them, non-citizen voting rights, which they shouldn't have a right to vote because they're not citizens. They can't tell us or share or try to put forth an opinion based on something they have known nothing about because they just got here. In a sense, I know that sounds kind of harsh, but that's just the way it is. So now we take the illegals that have come in the last 3.5 to 4 years. Take that on top of the last 5 to 10 years that have been hidden in the shadows. The Democrats had a massive amount of money to utilize in two major bills that were passed as into law. Let's talk about that and what that did. First, infrastructure bill that touted as, oh, this is going to be a revolutionary for the infrastructure, bridges, roads, and charging stations for electric vehicles. I mean, they just sold us all over this $1.7 trillion package. It sounded great. Take forward another one, the Inflation Reduction Act. Oh yeah, that was a real winner. That really brought inflation down. No, it was hidden climate change money, and it increases exponentially over the next 5 years. It was a joke. But in those two bills, you're not gonna like this. Whoever's listening, I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. There were two carve-outs, and you can look these up. One in the infrastructure was a $50 billion money set aside for climate change initiatives for low-income, impoverished families living in areas like Section 8 housing, government-assisted housing, or just low-income families. Sounds great. The thought was, oh, it's going to be air conditionings, new roofs, insulation, better windows, better housing, save energy, save money, help them. The other one in the Inflation Reduction Act, same thing, $50 billion, same wording. And again, it was small amounts of money at the levels of the entire package, which was in the 1.5, 1.7 trillion. These were huge numbers. So it represented a small percentage, a low single-digit percentage of the overall value of these bills that were being utilized into this, I would call it the impoverished. Now, fast forward. What were they really for? What was that $100 billion in total spend or allocation of funds really about? It was all about paying people to vote. If they weren't registered, and it was illegal aliens or legal immigrants, it was people that were in that low-income housing or low-income bracket or demographic, to give them benefits, increase their current benefits, and then to be able to utilize that money to register them for what? The Democratic Party, the Democratic vote. Some of these people were getting from $5,000 a month to $15,000 a month. We've heard about this in New York, where people are getting as much as $15,000 a month cash per person per month, plus up to a $5,000 housing allowance. That's where the money came from. The Republican Party doesn't have $100 billion last I checked, but the Democrats did, because they used the gavel and they passed these bills. Biden signed them into law. So they had almost like their own bank. And that's where the money came from to get the registration. Forget the numbers. We can talk about that shortly. But the method to the madness was exactly what I just said.
So that's going to have a significant effect on, when you say Trump could be ahead 3 to 4 points right now, but then if that's offset by some of those people who are never sampled, Christian, who could end up voting, that could make this race a whole lot tighter than it really should be, correct?
Oh, yeah, this horse race is completely different than what people think. What I said back in 20 was, and I wish I could have said that I sent hundreds of emails out saying that Trump was going to lose from corruption. I just said that the cautionary measure we all need to take within any kind of political race, and this being obviously the biggest of all of them, and 20 was that when people are so power hungry and they have such intent on keeping that power, don't be surprised that they come up with some pretty clever schemes. One of the things of which made me very concerned prior to the 20 election was when Biden slipped and said, oh, we're running one of the largest election campaign fraud and organized endeavors in history. He said that. He said that they were running something that would skew the traditional win by legitimate means, like, real people voting and really and giving their candidate the best opportunity. He made it clear that they were going to do whatever it takes in order to win the election, and that's what happened. Now, go fast forward. What would be different today that is not different back then? And then they want even more power to finish the agenda. So when you look at the overall antics of how the Democratic Party, and many of them we can call out names, but we don't have to do right this second, just look at the overall understanding of what they've accomplished in 20. They accomplished a lot in 22. There was a lot of things in the Georgia election that I was listening to, especially on the runoff with the Senate for Herschel Walker and so forth, and how they've now fast forward. And they've said before, they will not lose this election. They will not allow Trump. So what we have to do as Republicans and people that we want a fair election. Look, I'll accept whoever wins if it's fair. That's right. The way it works. Everybody needs to accept that we're a republic, not a democracy. Fairness is the key to sustaining a healthy middle class and a vibrant country, especially one that, in this case, if Trump is our man, he's our man. If it's going to be Kamala Harris and she's the first woman, if it's fair, we accept that. But that's not what's happening with these illegal immigrants and the way they're signing them up to vote.
Well, Trump has gone out and said, look, and the media buries it, of course, Christian, but he has come out and said, hey, if the election is free and fair and there's not cheating, he'll accept the results. He's gone on record stating that. And we've had, his regular viewers of Election Edge watching, we've had election experts come on the show. In some states, there has been some nominal improvement. Georgia is a good example of that. We had an election integrity officer from the state of Georgia on talking about this. So again, there has been some improvement, but one thing, Christian, I've noticed, Republicans, whether it's like 3,300 counties across the country, Republicans have to keep a very close eye, the cameras on the drop boxes, making sure that in the states that were prone to have errors, some of which are these swing states, that there's integrity in the vote and that legitimate votes are counted and illegitimate votes are not. All right, we're up against the break. We're going to take a 90-second break. But when we come back, we're going to dive into these numbers a little more, talk about the debate, and get some perspective, particularly on what Trump can do to solidify his position tonight.
Former National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, pleaded guilty today for lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
Every American needs this historical DVD keepsake. Flynn delivered the truth, whatever the cost. Hand signed by General Michael Flynn. Order now at the Patriot TV store. Use promo code PTV at checkout to get special savings. The Patriot TV store, a secure, hassle-free shopping experience.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most precious assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott Precious Metals at 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900.
And we're back with Christian Briggs. Christian, on those betting markets, the numbers I had shows Trump with about a 5 to 6 point lead, and that's aggregating all the betting sites. And there's been close to $1 billion bet on this election so far. So those are the exact numbers we were looking at. Real Clear Politics average shows Harris up 1.1%. Now that's popular vote numbers. But here's a question I have for you. A PBS Marist poll came out today, and Marist is a pretty good polling organization. They had Trump up 49-48, but when you factored in people that would definitively vote, it showed it to a 3-point swing for Harris. But here's what I didn't get about that poll, and I tried to dive into all these before we talk about it. It showed that from when the polling took place in August until now, Trump surged like 13, 14 points with independents. And I'm sitting there saying, how in the heck can Trump surge that much and literally only be ahead by a point? Now, I don't know if you've dove into that one or not, but they are a fairly reliable outfit. Their numbers are consistent with what other organizations have been saying publicly. But it seems to me that with both Harris and Trump getting 93 to 94% of the vote of their respective parties, if Trump swung into the lead with the independents, he would be in a lead more than 1 or 2 points. What am I missing?
Well, you would think. No, I don't think you're missing anything. I think look at the context of what the independents represent now, and I'm going to say this with great respect to the independent voter and the libertarian voter, which obviously libertarians can lean a little bit more left, or independents can lean left, and libertarians can lean a little more right. You never know sometimes how they're truly going to vote. There have been a lot of people in cases in the past, and maybe this is not, or maybe it is. They'll say, oh, I'm voting for Trump, and they don't. They go to Kamala and things like that. So they do skew it. Not everybody's always straight up on how they're going to vote when asked. But let's talk about the generalization of what you said. The libertarian, if he's 13 points ahead in that category with that particular voter, I don't know how many people that represents in the overall weighted average. So maybe 1 or 2 points swing from that type of voter toward Trump may be accurate. I will say this, though. Let's talk about what we can quantify. When you look at illegal immigration again, and I want to go back to this because it does make the point very clearly that if, for example, and I mean this in trying to utilize, again, quantitative and quantitative type measurements, the thing that I'm really trying to get is the 35 million people that have been signed up by the Social Security Administration. And think about this, 35 million people that have now received benefits that weren't there 3.5, 4 years ago. How many of them are registered Democrats? Well, probably all of them. And why? And that is because in order to maintain those benefits, our understanding and sources in DC and around the US have pegged their DMV, okay, they get their little driver's license, they get a temporary identification number, papers, whatever you want to call it. That then goes through the system. They now become voters. They vote in the election. They maintain the consistency of what they were promised, which is the entitlements, the handouts, the giveaways, the cash per month. All of a sudden, you've got 30 to 40 million new voters. Now, how does that equate in the points? Well, I like to think that number is hopefully going to be a lot lower, but just in various states, the numbers are starting to come out. And I think we talked about this right before the show, and that is this. Okay, you've got numbers right now that are flying out there, and let me try to pull some of these up because it's basically, and I want to say scary, if you will. In Texas alone, the Social Security Administration in 2024, their HAVV data systems have registered almost 3.2 million new beneficial recipients of Social Security benefits just in Texas. Okay, that'll skew election. I assure you, that many will skew an election. Pennsylvania, over 1.6 million. Arizona, almost 1.4. Georgia, just under 300,000. And these numbers are not fresh. These are probably 2 months ago now. North Carolina, 400,000. And remember today, it showed that she was in the lead. Kamala Harris was in the lead in North Carolina by possibly as much as 1 point. Nevada, almost 72,000. Missouri, you'll love this, which is a conservative state by definition, almost 1.8 million. That's what they know about. And we can go across the country. When adding up the benefits, I believe around April or May, and don't hold me to the exact month, but I know within that late spring, early summer, the Social Security Administration said we have at least signed up 30 million more people to get benefits since Biden took office. Where'd they come from? They're not 60 years old and above, they're under 60. So that means that there's some way, somehow, asylum seekers, safe haven, safe harbor, illegals from here, the past, the present, or maybe it really is just young people signing up. And maybe we're all wrong about this, but I don't think we are.
Well, that would, based upon your numbers, that would lead you to believe that some of this polling could be off astronomically. But a lot of the pollsters, Christian, are, they're using what I call the Trump performs better than his polling averages. Case in point, at this point in 2020, Biden was up like 7 points. He ended up winning by 4.5. Hillary Clinton was up just under 3. She ended up losing. Won the popular vote by close to that, but ended up losing the Electoral College. So you mentioned some of the swing states there that are pretty important. I mean, you mentioned Pennsylvania, you mentioned North Carolina. Those are absolutely tight as a tick, swing states. And frankly, Trump needs to win both of those. Minimally, he has to win Pennsylvania. If he doesn't win Pennsylvania, I don't see a path to winning, but I think he will win Pennsylvania. We'll put up a chart here in a little bit. But the concerning piece is if some of those people do vote and they're not being picked up, then we could have a situation sort of like a 2020 redo. And Christian, we definitely don't want to see something like that happen, because that would really hurt the integrity of the election. Do you see that as the greatest risk to this election right now?
Yeah, no question. Here's what we've got. We know that the illegal vote, I call it the illegal vote, let's just call it for what it is securely being put to the test. There was a loophole that allowed the illegal immigrants to receive some type of a beneficial residency with the right to vote. There was a loophole. When that was exploited on an executive order in early 21, that executive order opened the floodgates. I mean, overnight we had open borders. Those open borders then would take whatever asylum seekers and anybody coming across the border into a makeshift system, okay? A system of, I will get you here in the U.S. You'll become at least a resident, not a citizen, but your pathway to citizenship will be started. But in order to do that, the Democratic Party is the party that you need to protect and to favor, because we're the ones giving you the asylum, we're giving you the benefits, we're giving you a path to citizenship like the Republicans would not do. Because that is a true exploited loophole within the immigration laws, especially of the Constitution and the way you can vote or not vote. Think about this. The Save the Vote, basically, Act, which is part of the spending bill, which is being attached, which I can't see the Senate passing that, because the Democrats would negate everything they've worked for to keep this power, even under any circumstances. That is being attached to the spending bill. If there wasn't the possibility that could sway the election, and again, it could be 3 million, it could be 30 million, it could be 33 million. All I know is the math is showing that an incredible amount, and it's being published daily now, there's starting to more and more numbers come out. That is, in my opinion, how are you possibly going to get those polls from those people? Half of them, if 90%, don't even speak English. You're not going to go out there and they don't even have a residency. Like, where do they live? How do you get a hold of them? Yes, they got a cell phone under the immigration policy that has been set up. Obama set that up. Remember the free Obama phones? Who's got their cell numbers? And who's going to even call them in the first place? Who would want to call them? Well, Democrats don't want to call them. See, it's the old saying is I'd rather party, work with, in the Democratic Party, the devil we know than the devil we don't know. And right now, the details are in those immigration. And that is the problem. We don't know how to measure those votes and quantify them against the votes that we know that are legitimate. Trump would win in a landslide by 13 to 15 points, in my opinion, if the election was completely fair and there was none of this nonsense held today.
Let me ask this, Christian. Let's talk about the bill that you're referring to, because with all the promotion of the debate tonight and all the focus on Trump and Harris, there's actual legislation happening in Washington, D.C. right now, and there is risk of a government shutdown. Let's elaborate that a little bit. Speaker Johnson is trying to attach this, we'll call it supplement, we'll call it a bill, to the budget deal. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, Christian? Because that some of our viewers may not quite be as familiar because they've been focused on the election, not the day-to-day of what's happening in Washington, D.C. and the risk to a potential government shutdown.
You bet. That's a great point. Let's talk about that bill. If there wasn't of the greatest concern in D.C. by both parties, one who's doing it to effectively win through corruption, through a loophole. You know, everyone says, oh, on the Democrat side, it's legal. Technically, that loophole was exploited, which was originally that was illegal, but by exploiting it, they opened up a floodgate of a loophole. But that's for the magistrates and the fancy lawyers to argue that on appeals, and hopefully they will, and they'll get an emergency injunction or something with the Supreme Court. But putting that aside, let's talk about the present. So what's being passed through the House by Speaker Johnson and a lot of his, obviously, many colleagues, is to add a supplement to the spending bill that says nobody who has come into this country at any point has illegally, let's make it clear, it's illegal, has the right to vote in a general election. They do not have that right. They will not have that right. That is not a right given to them under the Constitution. It is, you can't go to anywhere in the world and have a country say, sure, come over here today on a Wednesday, general elections on a Friday, we want you to be a part of the vote. You don't even know what you're doing. You don't know what you're talking about. We have taken I won't even say, a constitution that's so well written, they've exploited it, and this is where it gets really scary, to basically create a one-party system that would forever be in power like California. If this election does not go the way it should, which is fair and honest and by the book, we could be in jeopardy by the numbers we don't know. Now, yes, the numbers are coming out, and there is some concern, so much so that this introduction of this supplement or this provision that goes within the spending bill, I have a feeling there's not a chance in hell that Schumer is going to ever allow this to get passed in the Senate, because it destroys their entire work, and they're not going to do that because at the end of the day, their justification is, we're right, you're wrong, we know how to govern, we know how to govern you. And that's what their belief is. And come November 5th, we're going to find out whether they were right and we were wrong, and, you know, the numbers are the numbers.
The numbers are the numbers. That's exactly right. Well, that's a nice setup for when we come back. We're going to take a 90-second break, but when we come back, Christian and I are going to talk about those numbers and what needs to be talked about tonight at the debate, because, folks, with a $35 trillion debt, we are now paying more in interest on that debt than we do for national defense. This has been predicted for years that we would hit this point. Well, we're there now. So that'll be a talking point for tonight's debate, I'm sure. So we'll dive into this and some other issues when we come back. See you in 90 seconds.
Don't let them win. Patriot TV is committed to delivering the truth. America's new network for patriots is growing fast, and we'd love you to join us as a member of Patriot TV. Your support makes it possible for us to continue to deliver unbiased reporting, thought-provoking discussions, and insights you won't find anywhere else. From in-depth interviews to behind-the-scenes footage, Patriot TV brings you closer to the voices shaping our nation's future. Whether it's political developments, cultural shifts, or global affairs, Patriot TV keeps you informed and empowered. As a member of Patriot TV, you'll get perks like personal invitations to exclusive Patriot TV events, where you can gather and network with like-minded Americans. We'll also host online events throughout the year with General Flynn, who's committed to host live Q&A webinars where callers like you can ask him questions and get real answers. Access to these events will be members only, so go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member. It's fast and easy. We have a great membership option starting at just $9.99 a month, or save with our annual membership for only $99, or take advantage of the best value, the 2-year membership for just $159. Go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member. It's fast and easy. Do your part to make sure the truth gets out to all patriots and help ensure future programming. Become a member today. Just go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member, join today.
And we're back. Christian, Comrade Kamala, to borrow President Trump's term, finally put some, quote, policies on her webpage. I took a look at that. Those were not policies. That was like a wish list with literally no substance behind it. And as it turned out, her incompetent staff that she basically borrowed from Joe Biden when he stepped out of the race, they basically lifted Biden's positions, put it on her page, and yet she's trying to run as the change candidate. I don't see any way possible Trump's going to let her get away with that tonight, because that was basically all mush on that page, and there really was no positions about how she would achieve those, quote, soft objectives.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about policies. You're right. It was a communist list, hardcore socialist wish list of ideology that would implement if she's elected president. So, and it was done in such a way that kind of like Mickey Mouse kind of through the system. It was like, okay, this is what I'm aiming for, but it's like look up in the sky wish list to be able to put it together to appease the far left, the Bernie Sanders, the Elizabeth Warren, which really is where the Democratic Party has shifted to. But let's not try to sugarcoat it. The policies that she's going to be discussing tonight are going to be the ones she discussed more like 5-6 years ago, where she's saying, oh, I want open borders. I don't want police. I don't want ICE. I want 80% tax rates. I want a wealth tax. See, these are the policies, and the best one is, oh, there'll be no fracking. There'll be no oil drilling. There'll be no offshore drilling. These are the things at which Trump is going to get her on, because she completely changed, and I'm going to say, whoa, the change there, over about 3 weeks on all of the things she said years ago, and she believes in that. Let's not think that she's all of a sudden found religion and said, well, maybe we do need fracking. Maybe we do need secure borders. Maybe we do need quality health care, but not socialized medicine. Maybe we do need the various things that I'm all against from 4 or 5 years ago. All of a sudden I'm flipping. No, she believes everything that the hard left, the far left, the progressive left, all the way to the comrade left. And Trump's not wrong. I mean, he's been right about everything when it comes to the way they played this game from 16, 20 to 24. He's always right about this. Sometimes it takes a month or even a year or two for him to be looked upon as being, God, he's right again. Same thing when he said, Russia, do not get hooked on their gas, Germany. They laughed. He was right. Look where they're at today. So let's go forward to tonight's debate. Okay, and I'm so glad you brought this up because this is a great topic. One of the things in the last 24 hours they removed was the muted mic, right? So basically, or they brought the muted mic because she wants to interrupt. The way they were starting to build her case and the way she was going to debate, from my understanding, at least my sources in DC, was she would interrupt. Now, with the muted mic, she's not going to be able to do anything. He's going to be able to say what he's going to say it in the length of time he's given. Let the words flow, the sentences be made, the case be made. She's going to have to sit there and go back and go, okay, maybe I said that, but I don't mean that now. She won't be able to interrupt to stop the flow of information that is clearly accurate. Trump will not say anything that's not accurate at these debates. He'll be right on the money. He'll definitely be very precise. He's going to sniper shoot, because that's all you can do when you comes to a communist. And let's say for what it is, it's Marxist ideology. That by definition is communism. It's not hardcore socialism where we actually have a chance to make something. Not much, but at least you got something. Communism is the removal of anything that you get from the fruits of your labor. It's basically just justification for existence. She's going to have to defend that ideology in an environment that we all are going to be able to see. Now, here's what scares me. I'm going to say this. They're letting her debate in the first place. That's what makes me nervous. What is it they know? Is it the 30 to 40 million illegals that have been signed up to vote that could sway the election, even if she falls and quite honestly lands in a very detrimental environment, or at least that's the net consequences of tonight's debate? Or do they really have her game on and she's going to go out there and she's going to be unbelievable effective? I can't see her being effective. It's like saying a marble is a great thing to use for as a nail. You can't make a marble a nail. They're not that sharp. I've checked. Marbles aren't. I don't think they're round. I think they're round, and they're not that sharp to me. So if this marble is out there, they think she's going to be on point and be a sharpshooter, I think they need to rethink their whole marble idea.
Christian, the Democratic Party's coming out and they're doing pre-debate spin, talking about if she even can keep up with Trump. I mean, it's almost like they're selling her short before the debate even starts. I mean, it's pretty mind-boggling. I mean, everything from, well, she's only 5'4" and Trump's 6'3", so that gives him an advantage. I mean, this is some of the most preposterous stuff I've ever heard. But given the current modern day Democratic Party, that's what we have to expect. Christian, I'm going to take Madam Producer, if you could cue up that one video, and folks, you're going to be shocked. This is actually CNN that gave an honest assessment. It's 3 minutes. We're not going to play 3 minutes of it. But Madam Producer, if you could play about a minute and a half of this just to get a sense of these flip-flops on issues that we're talking about. And again, when Christian says Marxist policies, no better than when she's gone off the teleprompter and talked about taxing capital gains before you realize them, wage and price controls relative to food industry. I mean, this is insane stuff, folks. And then she comes out, and as Christian talked about earlier in the show, now all of a sudden the capital gains tax rate, Biden proposed to 44%. No, she's going to be at 28%. Again, if you didn't know any better, you would say that Kamala Harris is tacking to be a liberal Republican because her policies damn near mirror Trump. All right, we're going to play this clip for about a minute and a half.
The first time on her campaign website. A K-file investigation has uncovered, meantime, a 2019 questionnaire. And in this questionnaire, Harris laid out some much more liberal stances, among them on immigration. So in 2019, in what K-file found, she said she would cut funding to ICE, writing, quote, "Our immigrant detention system is out of control, and I believe we must end the unfair incarceration of thousands of individuals, families, and children. I was one of the first senators after President Trump was elected to advocate for a decrease in funding to ICE." Well, now, of course, she's touting the Biden administration's executive order to crack down on the border. K-File's Andrew Kaczynski joins me now. Andrew, that's pretty incredible on its own when you're talking about what you found here on ICE. What else did you find?
Yeah, and this was a questionnaire that she filled out for the ACLU, and this questionnaire is really an interesting snapshot in time of that 2019 Democratic primary. Kamala Harris was trying to get to the left of Bernie Sanders. She was trying to get to the left of Elizabeth Warren, and you really see that in a lot of these answers, and I want to walk our viewers through a little bit of what she said. Let's just take immigration and look at what she said here. She said on immigration, she made this open-ended pledge to end immigrant detention. She said she supported taxpayer-funded gender transition surgeries for detained migrants. She also said she supported
taxpayer-funded gender transition surgeries for detained migrants. She actually said she supported that.
She both wrote and answered in the affirmative when she was asked this. Oh. And she said she also supported it for federal prisoners. Now, she also pledged to slash immigration detention by 50%, close all family and private facilities, and decrease funding for ICE, and then end ICE detainers with.
Christian, those are just a sampling of her old positions. That new webpage that has, quote, aspirational ideas, it doesn't even remotely look like what her real policies are. And as I learned from a lot of people, when a politician tells you something initially, believe them, because that's what they really believe. Christian, isn't this more evidence that, again, if she were to pull off an upset win over Trump, this country will be definitely taking a left-hand turn. And one of her stated policies is pathway to citizenship for every illegal immigrant. Christian, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so everything that this fellow just talked about is absolute truth. In fact, let's take it a step further. The policies that she's had for her whole life come from a parent, her father. Now, her mother was a go along, get along kind of attitude as well. She believed in a lot of the ideology. She may have been out there in the forefront of the front lines, but her father was a card-carrying Marxist who believed that communism was the utopia for all society. And when you start to think about that type of ideology from a young girl and her sisters and brothers and relatives of all sorts, nieces, nephews, uncles, and have you, they were all communists. They were all Marxist. The ideology carried forward. Her true belief idolizes what the Obama once said is, I will turn this country into a transformation. And the transformation was pure communism, where Soviet Union style system would be put through, and that would have been closer. We'd be closer today had Hillary Clinton won. The ideas that Obama, now Kamala, shared, that Hillary had at the time, where she made it clear, I am a progressive. I will make the changes necessary. If it takes those changes to get me into high office, so be it. I'll make it, because the power and the position was greater than the detrimental consequences of the ideology, the agenda of communism to the people. So her power play was greater value to her than what the consequences are to the people she would have installed. Trump wins, they get sidetracked, they get mad, they try to impeach him. Fast forward, they cheat. 2020, Biden takes office. He installs all the wrong people, right for him, wrong for us, wrong for the country. Next thing you know, we're facing that same dilemma. I don't know the exact numbers of how many illegals and or people that would have otherwise not voted if they hadn't been coerced financially. That's what it is. It's coerced financially in this election versus would had they not gotten these monies. So the fair election thing is not part of today's equation. It just isn't. I will say this on the record. There has been a grassroots movement that I personally had donated to, that is to try to seek a fair election, spearheaded by many of the senators in the Senate here from Tennessee and from Texas and several other states, to be able to shore up the fairness as best they can, bring to what they consider, and I agree with 100%, and that is to try to organize up to, I think Lord Trump said, 500,000 people around the country that are going to help sign up new registered Republicans who want to fight the fight, who are going out there every day to be able to counterbalance the illegals. The budgets that the Democrats had and currently have now, not from fundraising, but from these different bills of legislation that ultimately got passed, it's hard. It's very hard to compete with tens of billions when you have hundreds of millions. But the good news is nobody wants communism. Who would vote yourself into poverty? I mean, if there's anybody out there, raise your hand now, because that is just not something you should really be admitting. If you're that naive on how that stuff works, then just take a free trip, one-way ticket to North Korea. They'd love to have you. They need more people in their labor camps. Listen, if you like dog, cat, rat, or snake, that's your best place to go, because that's a delicacy up there. So God bless you. But here, we love hard work. Hard work pays off. Capitalism is the name of the game.
Yeah, no question about it. And despite all these issues we've talked about, Donald Trump, on the economy, on inflation, on illegal immigration, those are his strong suits, and I hope he plays them tonight. All right, we're going to take our final break here, but when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about what happened with Bobby Kennedy, and we're going to even talk about Jill Stein a little bit. Shocking statistics came out. Christian, I wasn't aware of it, but we'll talk about that on the other side of the break.
Attention business owners, are you ready to advertise to millions of loyal patriots ready to buy your products or services? Here's your golden opportunity to advertise with Mark Schaftlein. When you advertise on Election Edge, you've aligned your company with a trusted voice and connected with an audience that shares your values. Mark hosts the exciting new live show that delves into every facet of the 2024 U.S. presidential election, offering insightful analysis, expert interviews, and up-to-the-minute coverage of the key events and developments throughout the election season. When you advertise on Election Edge, you're aligning your brand with integrity, loyalty, and a dedication to truth. Mark's audience is passionate, conservative, and committed to the values your business stands for. When given the choice, Mark's followers will buy your product or service over other woke companies. Don't miss this opportunity to elevate your brand with the power of Patriot TV. Reach out to us today at advertise@patriot.tv.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
And we're back. Christian, 2 points I want to talk about here. And normally I wouldn't take a lot of time on this, but in an election this tight, any advantage whatsoever could be very important. In North Carolina, the Supreme Court of the state of North Carolina ruled that Kennedy can take his name off the ballot. So they're actually having to reprint ballots, and they're not going to send them out as early as they plan. Michigan and Wisconsin, their respective Supreme Courts said, no, Kennedy has to keep his name on the ballot, even though he wanted to have it removed. Now, in Wisconsin, I think there was a law that clearly stated it. Michigan was pretty vague. So point number one, Kennedy coming off or staying on. Point number two, I saw some figures that actually shocked me today. When I was doing research, the Muslim vote in the United States, Jill Stein getting 30%, Kamala Harris in the mid-20s, Trump in the 15-16% range. Christian, I don't know how many Muslims vote in the country, but just by definition, that clearly could have an effect on what happens in Michigan. What were your thoughts on those two pieces, which may have been obscure at one point, but again, nothing's obscure in an election this tight?
There was a video circulating some months ago. I've seen it here in recent weeks again, where you had a Muslim who was a very honest individual who said, we vote to the left. And the reason is the policies of the left will hurt the country further and further and allow us to some way, somehow be able to bring eventually our way of thinking. Our religion is based on various fundamentals. The way of which they want to enforce that's called Sharia law. So he was basically saying that the far left voter is not an educated individual, very naive, simply votes on emotional, votes on policy that would otherwise lower the standards of the U.S. and lower its guard to where they could usher in a Sharia law type environment or some type of ecosystem within various communities, which they are clearly doing up in Minneapolis and in surrounding communities there. They've done it in Europe. So it's not surprising that the farthest left party, the Green Party, which is Jill, they're getting a lot of play from the Muslims, and then it trickles down into the Democrats, and whatever's left may be, the Republican stuff, because there are still some people within the Muslim community that doesn't like some of the things of which maybe the Democrats or the far left Green Party stand for. But at the end of the day, it is not surprising to me when you look at why they would vote left, because it undermines the Christian conservative right side thinking, even though not all Republicans are Christian. There's a lot of Jewish people. There's a lot of people of no faith that basically say, I just don't like the ideology of the left. I like it on the right. So I think that's going to have a big effect, because there are millions and millions of people that fit into that category that are probably going to vote left.
Yeah, well, Jill Stein is clearly the leftist to the left. I mean, so we'll see if it has an effect. I mean, look, if in some states, if she polls 2-3%, particularly in any of these swing states, that could be a fairly significant piece of data that maybe the pollsters catching it, maybe they're not. Listen, international affairs, Christian, I want to shift to that in a minute, because I know that's going to get talked a little bit about the debate tonight. And one thing I've always said Donald Trump should talk about when he was president we had peace, and we had prosperity. Just in the news today, we see about the Ukrainians drone strikes hitting a building in Moscow, okay, the Israelis killing a bunch of Hamas terrorists within a humanitarian, quote, camp. Christian, what are your thoughts on the international scene and Trump's ability to play that safety and security card? Because when people look around, again, there was a ceremony in Congress today honoring the 13 dead service members from that Afghanistan debacle. I don't know how the heck they got it done today, a debate day of all times, but they did. So a reminder about Afghanistan, problems with Ukraine and Russia, war with Hamas, and the Democratic Party basically shifting so far left that, Christian, we now have the Hamas wing of the Democratic Party. Can Trump play that to his advantage tonight?
I don't know how far the war engagement is going to go, because you've still got so many other things that could take center stage about policy, whether it's free health care, free universal basic income, free child care, free college tuition, the my body, my choice, the abortion, as well as taxes. However, and I'll throw in illegal immigration in there, and that's definitely going to be top priority in the debate. However, again, going back to the war, the Ukrainian war has siphoned about $300+ billion out of this country. Think about the measure of that much money against how many citizens there are and how much that could have benefited directly in different programs. But let's put that aside, because no one on the Democratic Party seems to care. It's all about money laundering, money washing, or doing whatever they think they're doing to help Ukraine, but it ain't working. Russia is clearly winning this war through attrition. They can afford to continue the resources of a slow, prolonged, dragged out war in order to lower the standards of military expertise as well as effectiveness from Ukraine. And well, in this case, it's now NATO who's given the weapons, then going to Moscow, which is a direct violation of all the treaties. I do expect Putin will make some kind of address to this in upcoming weeks. Trump can use part of this to show the weakness of the Democratic Party, the administration, including Harris's own failed policies. Where's she at? Why hasn't she stepped up? Why has she said something? In fact, she's remained so far behind that podium that you don't even know she exists sometimes. So I think that he'll bring it up. You've got to bring it up. You got to bring up Hamas, the pro-Palestinian movement. They're obviously catering. No question that Waltz was selectively decided on as VP to get the Muslim vote from Minnesota. But I always think, and correct me if I'm wrong, they should have gone with Shapiro. They were afraid of the Jew, as they call it, the Jewish heritage of Shapiro from Pennsylvania against the Muslim vote. There's so many things of which Trump can run on this tonight. I got to tell you, I don't see anything she can say or do that would keep her in this game legitimately with tonight's debate. How do you run on things that you've clearly made your life goal to a set in policy, and then to have to sit there and try to get people to believe that you're completely 180 degrees? What, in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and you built a 50-year career saying Marxism is the way to go?
Yeah, no, I think Trump's going to exploit that tonight. Now, the question tonight, Christian, is going to be, okay, will the debate be about the issues that the majority of voters care about, or will they focus on abortion, health care, free this, free that, student loans? In other words, the Democratic talking points. Will the moderators lean the questions that way, or will we get a fair debate? Now, I'm of the belief when CNN did the first debate, I thought it was fair. I thought the questions were reasonable. Now, obviously, Trump won and Joe Biden dropped out. But Christian, are you expecting a fair debate tonight, or do you think they're going to try to lean it towards the Democrats?
It's got to be fair. It's got to be fair. If I was the head of that network, it's got to be fair. I'm going to tell you why. You may or may not like Trump's agenda. You may not like his personality and the way in which he reflects his comments or his opinions or the things of which he does. You may not like that. Okay, so be it. But if your network skews this to the left and it's clearly identifiable, let me tell you something. You'll be barbecued on the ratings. People will walk away like they did the NBA, the NFL, various sports organizations, the Academy, the Olympics. You start doing that kind of stuff consistently, it will turn off 60 to 70% of the public. Even the left doesn't like that in some cases, especially the moderates. They want it to be at least fairness at the debates. Let the candidates make the arguments. Let them, whether they're affirmative or the narrative, let them debate. Because at the end of the day, then they can say, hey, even if there's some cheating, my candidate looked good, sounded good, acted good. Wow, that was amazing. Or they fell on their own sword legitimately. At least the argument's made that it was fair at the debate. The polls can be different. The ballot boxes may be skewed, but at least if I was the network head, I would say, you know what? Let's keep it fair. Let's keep it legitimate. Let the players play the game.
Yeah, and I hope that's how it comes out tonight, too. And I know that the right-wing echo chamber is pre-criticizing ABC, but we're not doing that here on this show because, again, CNN got some criticism before, but they ran a fair debate, and I am optimistic that we will get that fair debate tonight, and I really believe it. All right, Christian, 2 other points before we leave. Polling guru Nate Silver, who is a silver bullet, he was the Democratic poster boy for everything this man said was gospel. Well, if they're not saying it right now because he's come out and said Trump's probability of winning this election going into the debate tonight is 64% to 36% for her. Question number 1, A, do you put any credibility in that number? And then I'll move on to number 2.
I think it's very credible, again, in a fair election. See, it's like one of those things where if you're going against a great golfer, and you're a good golfer, but then the handicaps come in, is the handicap going to benefit you or the guy you're playing against? What if you play and nobody gives up the handicap? Nobody knows for sure who's who in the zoo, as we say on the golf course. Now you're playing with details you don't have at your fingertips. All of a sudden, this guy comes out swinging, and man, he's birdie, birdie, birdie. We don't know what the numbers are. The debate is going to be critical for several million votes. There's no question about it. And it may be just enough. I think that what you just said about the way this is being handled is 64%. It's legitimate in a legitimate election environment. No questions. It's a landslide victory for Trump. Tonight is worth a ton of votes. It's just, how does that compare to the votes that we know the Democratic Party are building through, well, clearly through the Social Security Administration's own numbers themselves?
Madam Producer, if you could put that map up I gave you, and I want to get Christian's comment on it. This is how Election Edge sees it right now. And if you look at that, you see Georgia red, you see Arizona red, Pennsylvania red. We've got Nevada blue, Michigan blue, Wisconsin blue. But look what we did with North Carolina. And the reason we grayed out North Carolina is because we've seen some polling indicate Trump's leading, some polling indicate she's leading. Okay, you can take it down, Madam Producer. Christian, that shows both candidates short of the necessary 270. Now, I know a lot of people have said, you can win the election without Georgia, but boy, looking at that, it seems to me Trump's path to winning it is Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. You got about 30 seconds.
Agreed. Okay, Georgia is an interesting place. Look at the senators, Democrat, governor, Republican. It's all based on that Atlanta area, kind of the surrounding suburbs of Atlanta. You look at Pennsylvania. Don't give up on Shapiro. If he's a killer there when it comes to organizing that. We look at the party as a whole, look at the Senate. But you're right. It's going to be down to Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. And North Carolina, who knows?
Christian, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today. Enjoy the debate tonight. And again, we'll have you back and we'll see if some of this analysis we talked about proved to be correct. Thanks again. All right, Election Edge, stay tuned to Patriot TV. We are going to have a special report an hour before the election. We'll cover the debate. We'll cover the debate, and then we'll have post-debate analysis. See you in about an hour.